Hey, previously we enforced 3 different rules for validating transaction data in the blockchain, and we've written quite a hefty chunk of code so far. These rules are one, that a block can only have one valid miner reward. All input should also be based on the blockchain history according to its bounds. And the transaction should be valid itself when running the valid transaction method. Now, the last rule is to enforce the block should have a unique set of transactions when it comes in. Absolutely no funny business should be allowed with a transaction appearing more than once in the block. We're going to start with the index.test.js file and rely on our trusty method of test-driven development. First up, we're going to get to the case where the block contains multiple identical transactions, and in this situation, it should return false and log an error. So to set this up, we should add a block to the new chain. This is going to have a data array, and this will contain a transaction not once, not even twice, but 3 times. So we had the same transaction appearing definitely more than once. Let's take the code where we expect the new chain validated by the blockchain to be certainly false. And then the error box should be called in this case. And then once you're ready, head to the command line, save the file, and then fire npm run test. And you should find that there's now one failing test, and it's certainly the case where there are identical transactions within the blockchain. So notice that our valid transaction data is returning true in this case, even though there's something definitely weird going on. And now to get this test to pass, we need to make a change in the regular blockchain/index.js file. So in the valid transaction data method, we need a way to keep track of all the transactions in the block. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to make a constant of transaction set, and we're going to make this an instance of the native JavaScript set class. This is a very nice data structure as it allows us to make a collection of unique items. So unlike the array, which can have duplicates, this set will make sure that duplicates are created within the actual data structure. So as we're going through every transaction in this block.data, we need to do one of 2 things related to the transaction set. Either we add to the transaction set the transaction if it's not already present, but if it is present, we're going to return false out of valid transaction data and log a relevant error. Okay, so down below, first up, we're going to check if the transaction set already has the current transaction. And real quick, as I scroll up, you're going to find that we purposely made this transaction set outside of the block that goes through every transaction in the block.data. And that is because we want this to be instantiated for every single block, not every single transaction. Okay, so we have this .has method to check if the transaction set already has the transaction. And in this case, we certainly want to return false. We also want to log a relevant error, or rather output a relevant error. And in this case, we're going to say an identical transaction appears more than once in the block. All right, nice. Otherwise, if the transaction set doesn't have the transaction, in the else case, we need to add that transaction to the transaction set. And for that, the set data structure has a very convenient add method. I feel like both of these methods are named really nicely. They get the purpose across very well. Now, as you save this, if you have an eye on the command line, you're going to find that the test suite passes the test, and indeed the test suite is fully green again. Cool. So with that, we've now validated the final rule for our cryptocurrency, and we fully enforced all the rules for valid transaction data in the chain. We put in quite a bit of work to this valid transaction data method. The final thing is to make sure that it's used in the actual application. So right now it's only being used in the test, but let's take advantage of the method to make sure that the application chain is only replaced when a valid transaction data method is passed.